Welcome everyone to today's webinar. As always, thank you for taking time out of your busy day as we're heading into the holiday season to spend some time with us and learn about our exciting partnership with the team at the Carbon Leadership Forum and the EC3 Tool. We had a great time at Greenbuild, and the launch of the EC3 Tool was super exciting for everyone. And today I'll be able to go into some detail about the integration, how it works, as well as how we believe it really will have a big impact on the PCR, LCA, EPD landscape to drive improvement in the way we report not just embodied carbon, but how we report environmental performance overall. Here's our agenda for today. Many of you on the call today, we know. Thank you for coming. Some of you are new, so we will start with an introduction to who is Sustainable Minds and what have we been doing for the last decade. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we've been working on in the PCR, LCA, EPD system since 2012, so not a new thing for us, which will actually give you some context for why we were very excited to partner with the Carbon Leadership Forum and the EC3 Tool team. And then we'll show you how the integration works and how both manufacturers and architects, engineers, contractors, and owners will be able to benefit. And then we'll talk about how transparency reports, our brand of EPD, really have found a place in time where people are asking for digital solutions and finally realizing that it's time to move out of PDFs and move away from non-standardized, long technical documents that make it very difficult for regular people doing research, trying to make decisions about products, and for any kind of digitization process, whether it's manual or machine read, to extract data to be able to add to different kinds of tools. I think people are becoming increasingly aware, and the EC3 tool being a real igniter of this, that the data needs to be actionable, and locking it into PDFs is no longer going to be the way to go. And by having tools that are digital and standardized and can be produced digitally in the first place, there's all kinds of places that costs can come down because things aren't being done manually anymore. And we'll get into some Q&A. If we don't actually get to your questions today, we are really good at following up. And so feel free to post your questions into the questions panel. You may actually leave a question when you exit, and we will definitely get back with you. So Sustainable Minds is a software company. We provide environmental product transparency, cloud applications, and services. I'm Terry Swack, the CEO and founder. I started the company in 2007. And our mission has never changed, which is to operationalize environmental performance in mainstream manufacturing to drive revenue and growth through greener product innovation. So if you look at the diagram on the right, what you'll see is a reference to our first product that we brought to market in 2009. We were the first to bring a streamlined eco-design and LCA tool to the market for product manufacturers across all industry segments, not just building products, but all types of physical products, to be able to evaluate the environmental impacts of products across their life cycle in early stage design to be able to make better decisions and ultimately bring higher performing greener products to market, which then sets the manufacturer up to use a full LCA tool and do go through the full LCA process and follow the PCR and the reporting process to create a market-facing document to be able to report on the environmental performance of their products. And if they're doing things that actually contribute to that performance improvement, that market-facing document is really where a person is going to want to know, what's the manufacturer doing to drive these improvements? Because ultimately, an EPD, for better or worse, it's a marketing tool, and people make decisions based on a lot of things, what they believe about the brand, what they actually know about what the manufacturer is doing, the product performance, experience, customer experience, and all of these things are taken into consideration now in making decisions. And everyone is looking for things to be simpler, standardized, save time. And so our business has always been about exactly that, combining the best of breed and customer experience design, web-based software tools, and credible technical knowledge to bring best-in-class tools to the market. Because of that, we became and are today still the only end-to-end product transparency solutions provider where we became a program operator so that we actually could understand program operation challenges and rules. We actually wrote the first two-part PCR program for North America back in 2013 and 14. We deliver LCA and material evaluation services. We believe we have to have the technical credentials and the technical knowledge to be able to design useful and credible tools. And with that knowledge of technical knowledge and knowledge of the market, we're able to deliver cloud-based transparency reporting tools along with training and education, because you can't expect people to do things differently without helping them learn while they're doing, and not expect people to have to go learn something new while they're trying to integrate it into their work. It needs to happen at the same time. So we really think long and hard about how to create kind of a seamless integration between our products and our services, again, to enable faster adoption, easier use, and ultimately better decisions. So a little bit of backstory on how we entered the product transparency space. As I mentioned, we launched the company. I started the company in 2007. We brought our first version of our software to market in 2009. And in 2012, when Lead version 4 was introduced, looking at offering a credit to owners and teams who specified products where the manufacturer created an EPD using lifecycle assessment, we already had been in the business of making lifecycle assessment information understandable and meaningful and useful by non-LCA specialists. It was a natural transition to start looking at, well, how do we make reporting tools for manufacturers that have the same ease of use, the same understandability, as well as the opportunity to present their brand and integrate meaning. By the time we got to 2016, there were enough manufacturers in the industry who had invested in product transparency for us to finally create the transparency catalog. And there were 350 brands at the time in North America who had invested either in EPDs or material ingredient disclosures. And so we decided we wanted to create a place to reward those manufacturers who were stepping up to really be transparent, invest in the very costly and risky and time-consuming efforts of doing LCA and creating EPDs and material ingredient disclosures, and make it super easy for people in the marketplace, architects, engineers, contractors, and owners, to find those manufacturers and reward them by specifying their products into their projects to build higher performing buildings. The transparency catalog was always designed to become a specification tool, and we've been playing the long game, waiting for the market to evolve, not waiting, watching the market evolve and continuing to evolve the catalog until such a time, and this time came in January of 2019, where we were able to implement the master format filtering, which we'll talk about in a moment. And during that time, the way we have maintained the catalog and continue to maintain the catalog is that we monitor every program operator site, every material ingredient disclosure program site, and add manufacturers and their data every month at a minimum, so that the catalog really is the destination that has every building product manufacturer in all of North America who has invested in one or more types of product transparency. So finally, in January of this year, there were enough manufacturers across enough master format divisions to implement master format filtering to really put us on track to providing a specification tool. And at the same time, we aggregated and organized all the EPDs from all the North American program operators in the catalog, and also assigned master format sections to those EPDs, sometimes multiple sections. Most EPDs don't have master format assignments, so that took some time. But now, and since January, the catalog has every manufacturer in North America who has invested in EPDs, organized by master format section. And we've seen a continued growth in EPDs as well as material ingredient reporting over this year. And you might ask, why add all the EPDs in North America to the catalog? It's a lot of work. Nobody's paying us to do it. And this is part of being a mission-based company and bringing better performing, easier to use tools to the market that will help people make better decisions and ultimately get us to where we want to go, which is to improve the built environment. The answer is pretty simple. With so many sources and variations of EPDs, getting them at least all in one place or identifying them all in one place means we could set on the path to further simplify, standardize, consolidate, and digitize those EPDs so that people ultimately could apply their own selection criteria to how they're selecting and specifying products. But getting them in one place makes it possible to start to compare brands and products. And as a program operator who has always had the intent to make environmental reporting simpler, more understandable and meaningful, when we looked around, it didn't look like there was going to be any other organization that really would invest full time in making this happen, with an eye towards really thinking about how tools, again, easy to use, you're going to hear me say that again and again, and have it integrated into the way people currently work and not asking them to do something different or separate. So you can understand when we met the EC3 folks, we actually met them at the ILFI conference in the spring. It was a clear meeting of the minds to partner because their objective was the same thing, was to take EPD data, digitize it, and standardize the delivery of that EPD data and put it to work into a tool that would help people make decisions. So one of the first things we did with the EC3 team was we provided them the links to all the EPDs we already had collected. So that became kind of the basis of our relationship. And these were the 4 key points that we outlined, that we would provide them EPD data, they would provide us back a simplified result, which is what we're going to dig into, and there would be a linking strategy between the tools that would make it possible for people to dive in from the transparency catalog, go to the EC3 tool, model, compare products, start to model projects, and from the EC3 tool, when somebody is modeling a project and getting down to comparing products, give them the ability to actually contact the manufacturer, find more information, and we like to say connect that last mile to making it possible for them to select and specify and engage with that manufacturer. And as a program operator, we have a technical advisory board, and we are all for promoting and supporting people who are also innovating in this space. And so we've worked quite closely with Kate since then on the evolution of the methodology and ultimately the explanation of the methodology, which is what we've added to the catalog. And we're going to dig into that. So you can see today, I pulled this screenshot yesterday. There's now over 2,200 EPDs that are publicly available on program operators' websites. So that does not include the on-demand EPDs, largely in concrete, that are not publicly available, that are being generated on demand. But those now are in the EC3 tool. So collectively, we're providing access to all the EPDs, and the number of brands continues to grow. And from the front page of the catalog, people can shop by brand, or they can use this filter bar to go directly into the master format division and or section that they're interested in and see all the brands and find their products and disclosures. All right, so that gives the overview of who we are and what we're doing and why we've partnered. I want to dig into this challenge a little bit. We've been doing webinars for the last couple of years about this topic exactly, what's broken about the PCR LCA EPD system. And since we launched the catalog, in the last 2 years, we've really been trying to deliver educational content to the building and construction industry about the challenges that manufacturers face when they're creating EPDs. It's not that they don't want to, it's not that they make hard to understand documents on purpose. It's really not their fault. I'm going to, lay the responsibility where it lies, which is begins with the program operator community, because it's the program operators who decide how their technical program works. We were part of an organization several years ago, the Program Operator Consortium, that came together to try to standardize, to create a technical program for North America. We got part of the way there. I'll show you a little bit about that. But things don't happen until there's really a market demand and a real appetite for making things happen. And I think the introduction of the EC3 tool is a great example of a real appetite, a real demand for wrapping our arms around the challenge and the problem of embodied carbon, delivering a tool, not yet perfect, but on a path. It's engaging a lot of people. I don't think they're going to lose momentum. We're not going to lose momentum with them. It's a problem that needs to be solved. And ultimately, if people don't engage, they're not going to be part of solving the problem. So this next portion is, again, to really lay out what the problems are, because all of you who are here on this call, I think, care. That was one of the descriptors of why attend. Attend if you care about fixing this system, whether you're a manufacturer who has EPDs already and needs to make more, and you understand the challenges because you're going through it every day, or you're an AEC who wants better data and you want easier to use tools. We're going to go through the things that have to change. So I want to start with just, again, going back to the basic rule, ISO 14025. This is the technical standard for how to create Type 3 environmental declarations. And I always like to pull out that on the front page of this standard, the stated objective is to encourage the demand and supply of those products that cause less impact on the environment through communication of verifiable and accurate information, thereby stimulating market-driven continuous improvement. That means providing LCA-based and additional information, not just LCA information, additional information on the environmental aspects of their products. They don't say how to do that. They just say you should be providing additional information. But they also say you got to assist people in making informed comparative decisions while not creating a comparative assertion, encourage improvement, and provide information for assessing those environmental aspects, again, to make the LCA data understandable and meaningful. And also in this section, it talks about making the information understandable to the intended audience. And that's a really important point that I think has not really been carried through by most program operators. And we're going to walk through this now. So based on that ISO 14025 standard, it is prescriptive about some things, about how to report LCA data. It's broad-based and less prescriptive in its guidance about how a Type 3 environmental declaration should achieve that goal that we just read. So program operators really are able to create PCRs and EPDs pretty much their own way, and run their technical programs pretty much how they like. There's the only requirement to become a program operator is for an organization to publish a governance document that describes their operating rules. So conceivably any kind of organization, if they wanted to, could be a program operator. It's not a huge cash cow kind of business. Trust us, but somebody's got to do it, and only if there are enough PCRs can there be enough EPDs. So let's just start right there. It's got to be simpler and more standardized and less expensive to make better PCRs that are at the right level of granularity that allow for manufacturers, a small group of manufacturers, to come together and create the rules for comparability and use cases and data sets and all the things that need to be defined and be in a PCR to make it easier to do the LCA, more standardized, easier for LCA practitioners to implement, which means less costly, easier for LCA practitioners inside of manufacturers' organizations to implement, and to be more standardized. So it's the PCR that describes the content that's required in the EPD. So again, being very specific about what information actually is required, and also what's useful, not just what's optional, and come up with some standardized approach so that EPDs from different program operators are not so different. And finally, the content that's included in the EPDs, going back to what I'd said about ISO 14025, it is more prescriptive about LCA content, less prescriptive about other environmental aspects, how to make the information understandable and meaningful, what's happening in each phase of the life cycle. And so because program operators tend to be technical organizations with technical people who are involved in the standards development anyway, they're not marketers. They're not storytellers. They're people who write rules. And so it's not surprising that EPDs are largely technical documents that follow rules and don't include much information about the brand or storytelling or other environmental information in ways that non-technical people can consume. And now, because we're really looking at how do we make that information in an EPD actionable, it can no longer just be delivered in PDFs. It simply cannot be encoded in a static document that's non-standard, where machines cannot find the data to be read into a database. And we'll talk a little bit about the challenges that the EC3 team has been having with that. And if program operators are going to come on board and enter that data into the EC3 tool database so that good quality data is there, that's going to take some time. So every program operator is probably going to want to make something that's simpler and more standardized. So finding that data and putting it into the database is going to become something that shouldn't take much time. It either can be automated somehow, or if somebody's manually doing it, like most of it is done today, nobody wants to page through a 10-page document to find the discrete pieces of information to ultimately put into a database. And then finally, it's this. It is just too expensive. It's too expensive to create PCRs. It's super expensive to do LCAs. And it's really expensive to do a lot of EPDs and get them all verified. And again, different program operators have different program business models. Some program operators charge a large fee every year for an EPD to simply be existing in their technical program. That's not our model. We believe that once you've paid for your EPD, you shouldn't have to pay for it anymore until you have to do a new one. So there's a lot of dissimilarities in business models, a lot of inconsistency in pricing, and because the deliverables are not comparable, the pricing isn't comparable either. So there's a lot more to understand to make decisions about going forward to make EPDs, because at the end of the day, if all you have is a PDF that gets emailed to you and you have to figure out how to put it to work, how to get it into digital tools, how to get it into the hands of your salespeople, get it into the hands of their customers, if your program operators aren't really putting your data to work for you, then they're missing out. And you're missing out. So moving ahead, I want to talk about our integration with the EC3 tool and some of the process, kind of under the cover process that we went through over the summer and into the fall as the EC3 tool was evolving. And you might have seen the link in the webinar invitation to this blog post that I wrote, and I'll be pulling a little bit of the content out of this about the EC3 tool, because it has really been, the front end story is the user experience of the construction team or the specification team or the design team being able to model and look at the embodied carbon in building projects and importing data from Revit or from Tally. The user experience story that's been told is that user's experience. And that was a big story. That was the story that needed to be told, because that's the story that makes the tool desirable, that people actually can build higher performing buildings and reduce the impacts. What people don't really see yet, and this is why I wrote the article, is that the intent of the methodology and the kind of underlying data, the way the methodology was written to use the data, is ultimately to drive the kind of change that needs to be changed to make this system actually deliver data that will be of a quality that people can then feel really confident in using the EC3 tool to make better decisions. I'm going to play just a little bit of upfront of this video. It went live yesterday. I'll send everybody the link, but I thought it was really good because Autodesk put it out, and this is to promote their integration with the Revit tool. But what it does is it really reminds us the importance.
Everything we build has a hidden climate impact due to embodied carbon. The carbon emissions generated from extracting resources, refining, manufacturing, and logistics. The embodied carbon of all the materials going into our buildings is hard to trace, but accounts for 11% of global emissions each year. You can't manage what you can't measure. So a consortium of industry leaders worked together to create a free, open-source, cloud-based tool called EC3. EC3 reveals the embodied carbon of the materials going into our buildings, so architects, engineers, and contractors can make informed choices, selecting materials with the lowest climate impact. For example, depending on how they were manufactured, one building component could have much lower embodied carbon than another that looks and performs the same. Autodesk understands the incredible value of EC3 in addressing embodied carbon in the built environment. Now, using the power of the Autodesk platform, material quantities can be extracted directly from BIM 360 into EC3 with the push of a button.
All right, so you get the gist. This is an exciting story that Autodesk is integrating this tool into their tools that people all around the world use, with this really exciting opportunity to make real change and have a real impact. But as you guys know, now if we go behind the scenes, so that's the front end story, now we're going to go to the underlying data story. Like any database, to be a little bit crude, you garbage in, garbage out, right? It's only going to be by ensuring that high quality data really does get created in the first place, and then it gets put into the EC3 tool, will people be making decisions based on the data that we as an industry, manufacturers and program operators, want to feel good about people relying on to make decisions. So all through the summer, all through the spring, even into the fall, the methodology has been evolving as Kate convened different groups to comment on different aspects of the methodology report for different categories. And her explanation of it has also evolved, but fundamentally, the story they've told is, here's the material quantity. Okay, this is like a nutrition label. And all we're trying to do at the end is let a design professional or a contractor understand where is the low-hanging fruit, meaning where are the greatest embodied carbon impacts in what product category, and then just pick a manufacturer's products that are going to get you the functional performance that you're looking for, but within a reasonable embodied carbon range. And that's all they're trying to do, is show you the range of embodied carbon across products in that industry and reasonably how to make a better decision. And so, Kate tries to tell this story about EPDs not really being comparable. And these are her slides. That's what I'm showing you. Done webinars together. So she tells this same story. She tells people this is the problem. And so, she does make the case, look, there is language that says EPDs can be compared if certain conditions are met. And so they've started out with kind of the low-hanging fruit product groups that have the greatest embodied carbon in this first release, and they're continuing to add product groups all the time. But what this methodology does is it takes all the imperfect data that exists today in all of the different formats of EPDs that are created, and is taking what I think is a really brave swag at putting that data together in a credible way to drive a decision tool. And you can see, over time, she was continuing to kind of rethink things, change terminology, think about different ways to compare. Coming up, starting January 1st, the Buy Clean California Act goes into effect, where awarding authorities in the state of California, government organizations, and the universities in California, when they have projects of a certain size and certain product groups, they're now going to be required to specify products with EPDs. In a year, there's going to be a benchmark requirement where the EPDs will need to be able to report relative to a category benchmark. So this is happening. We're going to see how, as an industry, we can actually make it happen in a way that is really useful and effective. But as you can see, it's pretty complicated. It's complicated and complex, the methodology and the data, even though what the tool is calling for is simplicity, transparency, consistency, and to be motivational. So over that period of time, again, going back to how Sustainable Minds builds tools, making things easy to use, understandable, and meaningful, we spent a lot of time focusing on the understandability because it's complicated. And, to be honest, it took us a while to really understand what was happening. But even harder was how to tell what was happening in a simplified way. And so what it comes down to is that there's 5 attributes that the EC3 methodology looks at in an EPD. Is it a manufacturer-specific versus an industry-wide EPD? Is it plant-specific, or is it averaging data from multiple facilities? Is it specific to a single product, or is it multiple products in a product family? And ultimately, these are 2 more attributes that they have not enacted yet, but they're looking at, which is going to be more timely data and a little bit more information about the data sets, actually. Today, they're only using these 3. So, so these are the 5 factors, and then it gets into a lot of math, which I didn't pull in. So we went through a whole bunch of iterations of how do we simply explain how the methodology works and what the result means. So when you click into the EC3 tool, and I'm going to do a demo, you're going to see on every EPD page in the EC3 tool, there's a comparative bar chart. And it is that comparative bar chart that tells the user what is the result of that particular EPD, the embodied carbon impacts, compared to the range of results of the EPDs that are currently in the EC3 database. So there's all kinds of exceptions, like, well, not every manufacturer has an EPD, maybe not every EPD is even in there, or maybe it is in there, but it hasn't been able to be digitized yet. Whole bunch of reasons. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to do was be able to provide another data point, just a simple data point about the embodied carbon footprint of a particular product, to be able to add that to a manufacturer's product information in the transparency catalog as another data point for people to use to make decisions, and then allow people to go into the EC3 tool if they like. So what it comes down to is that, and even creating this diagram took a lot of time to just simplify, and boiling this paragraph down into the one paragraph, which is the methodology that essentially says, look, the EC3 tool takes the global warming potential result from an EPD, looks at those 5 attributes, now currently only 3, applies a burden of the doubt calculation. And this is a term that you've probably heard, but maybe don't understand. Burden of the doubt is the opposite of benefit of the doubt. So benefit of the doubt means when you get the best outcome, even though proof has not been provided. So burden of the doubt is the opposite, which says, well, if you haven't provided proof specifically, then you're going to have to pay a tax. There's a burden of a tax that's going to be applied to that. So methodology goes through those 5 attributes, again, just 3, applies a yes or no. Is it this or not? Is it this or not? And if the answer is no, then an uncertainty value, an uncertainty penalty gets applied to that result. And ultimately, that comparative result gets compared to the entire industry of results, which also has the same uncertainty applied. So it's not comparing an apple to oranges, it's a single apple to all apples. And what this shows here is that this black line is the actual carbon footprint or embodied carbon result reported in the EPD. The fuzziness is the uncertainty value that's been applied. And so the comparison of the EPD result to the industry is done at the highest level of uncertainty. That's what they mean by a burden of the doubt methodology. So, we've provided this note, look, results are not precise. We really don't want people to think that these are precision results. They're directionally correct, and they should be used with that in mind. Just another data point to kind of keep in mind to make a decision, and you're going to be invited to go explore more. This was also important for us to add in the guidance that the results may not always identify low embodied carbon products if the EPD is multi-product, multi-facility, again, non-specific based on the way they're measuring it. So, and further, because there's not a result for every EPD in the catalog that is also an EC3, we wanted to let people know that there's a bunch of reasons why there isn't data yet, and we're all working on that. And largely it has to do with the non-standardization, the inability to digitize or even find the information in the EPD that they need to actually add it. So we invite people to go read the methodology, sign up for an account, and manufacturers, if you're looking at the catalog and you're looking at your EC3 results in the catalog, if you raise an eyebrow because you feel you have low embodied carbon products and the result is towards the higher end of the range, or there is no result, we are partners with EC3, and this is what we are working on with them to make the data better and to untangle data that's caught up that hasn't been able to be added yet, and to help find the data that does need to be added so that they can go ahead and do that and continue to expand their data set in a credible way. So with that, now what we're offering is a different user experience, right? So it's not the user experience of the AEC in a modeling tool, trying to build models, make decisions, and the EC3 tool, they really make the effort to remind people that it's a procurement tool because you can give guidance to the manufacturers. A building professional can give guidance to say, look, can you make that for me and keep the embodied carbon, at this particular level? So it can be used in the procurement process. So in the transparency catalog, it's a different user experience and it's a different stage in the decision-making process. So typically people are using the transparency catalog when they're thinking about the brands and the products they want to specify in a particular section or division. They're looking for products that can be used to meet Green Building Rating System credit requirements, or they're simply looking to build to the requirements of a particular Green Building Rating System without going for the certification. And so, again, the cross-linking strategy, if you're in the EC3 tool and you're building models and you're comparing products and you get it down to a couple of products, we'll show you how you'll be able to go from the EC3 tool from a manufacturer's page and that EPD page directly to the transparency catalog. Again, to find more information, contact the manufacturer, close the loop, let them know that you're specifying their products, and then from the transparency catalog to the EC3 tool, if you see a product in the listing or in the filtered results and it looks interesting to you, you can go right into the EC3 tool and start to model and do comparisons that way. So here's some quick screenshots, and I will do a live demo. So in the EC3 tool, there is a company page. This gets populated from an EPD. The first time they've added an EPD. And there's also a logo here that will link right to the manufacturer's page in the transparency catalog. And this logo links back to buildingtransparency.org. This is an EC3 EPD page. This is the search results page. So now if I'm in 0950 ceilings, I can put in some search parameters. I'm going to see the range for the industry based on the EPDs that are in. And then it'll display all the EPDs that it has in the database that's making up this range. And then a user can click on the view detail, which will take the user to the EPD page where this is covered up, but here's the side-by-side diagram. And here's a link that will take the user directly to the manufacturer's transparency catalog listing. Now here we are in the manufacturer's transparency catalog listing. This tooltip comes up every time a user mouses over that question mark because it's going to take a while for people to kind of fully consume what this methodology is, how the data was derived, what does it mean, how to use it. Again, this result that we're displaying, this 60th percentile result, is this blue line right there. That's that final result. That's what we're reporting here, that blue line. That black line is the embodied carbon the A1 through A3 global warming potential result in the EPD. And now, when a user goes and filters by a master format, section, or division in the catalog, now they'll see every manufacturer in the catalog who has data in the EC3 tool. And you'll be able to not only compare, if that's something you want to do, compare the embodied carbon from products from the same manufacturer, but you'll be able to browse through all the manufacturers and understand that as well. And certainly by applying additional filters, in this case, we're showing when the user says, hey, show me everything that has an EPD, and by the way, show me everything that has a material ingredient report that I can use to earn the materials credit. It pretty quickly filters down to the manufacturers who really have invested in product transparency and are working hard to make higher performing products, and hopefully building professionals will proceed to reward those manufacturers who really are working hard to bring better products to the market. And in the filtered results, the user can click here, takes them back to their listing. This takes the user to the product page on the manufacturer's website. This goes to the EPD, the declare label, the HPD. Everything is right there in one click. And I think most importantly for the manufacturers here on the call, this is all about driving people back to your website, where I think people do expect that the best version of the content about your products is on your website. We don't believe that manufacturers should be managing a lot of content about their products someplace else. And so this whole information architecture is designed to make it easy to find those manufacturers and their products with disclosures, and pull kind of the kind of salient information from each of those disclosures so that in a glance, a user can see the important results from each of those disclosures. Now, this is a standard listing. This is an example of a standard listing in the catalog. This is how Sustainable Minds makes money. This is our business model. Manufacturers pay an annual subscription to add their products and their contact information. Now, in addition to all of the other tools that are embedded in this page, we are also now maintaining your manufacturer's EPD data in the EC3 tool, making sure that it's in there, making sure that it's accurate, making sure that the results are being reported accurately. So we're pretty excited to be able to offer that. And you'll see as you start looking through the catalog, it's going to take a while for more products to have EC3 results. We're still helping them scan data, put it in, get it organized. We now have a process where every week we get updated data, and we will be updating results on a weekly and monthly basis as needed. So jumping ahead to the last part, given that what the EC3 tool methodology is saying, and by the way, the Buy Clean California Act also requires single product facility specific EPDs to be compliant for specification. So now there's two drivers. If you want to sell your products to those awarding authorities, your EPDs are going to have to be product specific and plant specific. And to get the best, most accurate results in the EC3 tool, they're saying, hey, you have to give us data about the actual environmental impact, embodied carbon impacts of product, that exact product made in that exact plant. And that removes any uncertainty that we might have about averaged data, or non-specificity. Again, if people are going to use a tool that calculates the actual embodied carbon impacts and then use it as a procurement tool, then the data going into it needs to be that specific. So our transparency reports, we created them in 2013. We have a really powerful publishing platform that we continue to evolve and build out. So all the data components are there. They're already standardized. And we know how to engage both the technical LCA providers, whether they're LCA folks from the manufacturing organization or a consultant, and how the manufacturer can bring in their brand and marketing people to bring those brand assets and their stories about what are they actually doing to improve, so that we're integrating product transparency with product marketing, publishing a standardized document in the cloud, and also then delivering it as a PDF, which happens after it gets published in the cloud, and that the data we then add to the EC3 tool. We can create transparency reports from any PCR, whether it's a PCR from our program or not. You can see that it's a template. You can see it's standardized. The content that people are looking for is in the same place in every report. But we use, again, corporate identity, brand assets, imagery from the manufacturer to make that tool look like it's a document from them. And bottom line is it's 3 pages, and page 3 is optional. This is the optional content that ISO 14025 says a manufacturer can add, which is what's happening over the life cycle of their products. And we have guidance for how to write this content. Again, it's a template. This is where you get to tell your stories about what you're doing to improve the results that are actually reported here. There's a number of ways to do that. But now notice, if this is going to be an EPD, or we call ours a transparency report, for a single product from multiple facilities, notice that page 2 is the page that has all of the LCA results. So page 1 has the description, the pictures, the functional performance attributes. This links right to the product page in the manufacturer's website. Here's the master format section. You can download the manufacturer's guide specs. You can call them for spec help. Here's all the environmental performance improvements, all the certifications. And here in this zip file, in one click, a user can download all of the certifications and the transparency report and the guide spec all in one place. Again, making it super easy to find the information and then use that information. But when there's multiple facilities for that same product, all we have to do is add another tab for each plant. It's the same template, it's the same layout, just taking the content from the LCA and populating a separate tab. Our technical program, again, we were the first to write from the ground up a 2-part PCR program for North America. It has been optimized to be conformant with 21930. We did that last year. It's very explicit about the content that goes into the transparency report and how much LCA content should be going in, so that it doesn't become a long technical document. We've made it really easy and really cost effective to create Part Bs. They're $8,000 for the group. They take roughly 3 months because it's a standardized form that manufacturers know how to answer the questions with some guidance. So it doesn't need to be a long, lengthy, contentious, expensive process. And we are at the top of our time. What I'm going to do is encourage you to visit the Carbon Leadership Forum, sign up for the EC3 tool, and contact us. If you're an architect, builder, contractor, we do demos all the time for people in your organization about how to use. And if you're a manufacturer, we'd love to talk to you about adding your products to the transparency catalog. And if you're looking to do more EPDs, we'd love to talk to you about those as well, and how our transparency reports and our other transparency reporting tools can help you become a featured brand in the catalog to get more visibility and get your stories and your brand in front of the people who really do care about consuming that information to make those decisions.